Good morning, God damn it. Piss and Vinegar Day 196. I can't remember what day it was. I think it's 196. So I'm doing back and biceps and forearms. I'm going to talk about a topic today. I'll get to that in a second. But before I start getting into the topic, these videos are taking forever because I'm doing everything unilateral in the upper body now because obviously my left side just got over a surgery. So today I'm implementing a little bit of back on my left side. Didn't do biceps or forearms for obvious reasons because it's a bicep reattachment surgery. I can't jump into the biceps just yet, but I did a little bit of back. But everything is being done unilaterally, so the workouts take significantly longer. But anyway, just at some point, if I run out of shit to talk about, it's because the video is so fucking long, and in which case I might just go silent and you can just watch the video in peace. But I want to talk about suffering today. So this is an idea that I really enjoy thinking about, or just a thought process that is very powerful in my opinion. I don't like motivational speeches or quotes. You see those motivational quotes on Facebook where some guy posts a picture of a lion or some fictional character from a TV show, and it's some like Sigma quote. And that shit is just cringe on so many levels, but cringe from the biggest level in the sense that people who really enjoy motivational posts almost never do anything with themselves. They just read all the self-help books. They read all the social media posts that have the Thomas Shelby from fucking Peaky Blinders. They go, yeah, that's me, dude. I'm like, I got that dog in me. I'm a hardcore motherfucker, and I'm really motivated. It's like, that's great, but motivation lasts you like 15 minutes, and then you got to go for that run, and it's cold outside, or you got to go lift weights, and you're tired, or you're fucking hungry because you're cutting weight, and all of a sudden motivation doesn't work anymore. You need drive. So I don't like motivational quotes for that reason, but I do like the motivational quote of suffer or suffer, partially because I have no idea where it originated from. I don't know who said it. It might be one of those old-timey, Stoics like Marcus Aurelius or something. I have no idea. It's a very Stoic quote in a sense because you're just accepting reality one way or another. But yeah, I liked it. I just like it because it's very simple. It's not flashy. It's none of this like fucking, I don't know. It's not like a Bruce Lee quote with a lion on Facebook in front of it. You know what I mean? It's just real, and it's true as fuck in the sense that you either suffer or suffer. Life is suffering in many ways, and you have to choose which suffering you want to endure. So in an exercise context, for example, you either do the 30-minute workout once every few days or every day or whatever. You just do. Let's say you're doing an hour of workout every single day. That's a fraction of your day. You have 23 hours left. The rest of those 23 hours and the rest of those months and years ahead are going to be significantly better off from that temporary suffering, that 1 hour of suffering. Whereas if you trade that in for pleasure by not training, that's cool. You get temporary pleasure by not doing said thing, whether it be working out, whether it be eating right, whatever. But then obviously the rest of the day is shit and the rest of your years is shit because you have to choose the suffering. And I like to think of it in the first suffer is lowercase. It's like a small suffering. And then I like to think of the secondary option or the secondary suffering or the consequence of not doing that original suffering as a large fuck off uppercase, using uppercase. So that small 30-minute suffering in the grand scheme of things is nothing. But the consequences of not doing it is 10 decades of being a fat, weak loser who has done nothing for themselves, feels like shit, looks like shit, can't get a girlfriend, you can't walk up a flight of stairs, your knees hurt, your face, you're all fat, and you're just a weak human being, and you never really put any degree of difficulty into anything. You haven't done the temporary suffering. However, you are suffering majorly the consequences. And it could be so many things. It could be business. Maybe instead of working on your business, you go out temporarily, have the pleasure of drinking or playing video games or whatever. But ultimately, you're going to suffer significantly more from not doing, the business that you need to be doing. Or in my case, I don't particularly suffer in my workouts, and that's the thing. A lot of these sufferings, these temporary sufferings, on a long enough time frame, are no longer even suffering anyway. Whereas you can never get used to being a fat, ugly, unhealthy piece of shit. That's always going to be suffering no matter how you look at it. Working out or working on your business, eventually it becomes fun. You eventually like working out. Eventually you like working on your business when you start making money and you start seeing all the, different benefits you're getting to you and the people around you. But you'll never enjoy being a broke loser or a fat loser. It's just that form of suffering you cannot enjoy. You simply cannot. Or if you can, there's something broken within you. So yeah, I've been thinking about suffering versus suffering in so many contexts lately, even on the micro level. Let's not even talk about the macro level in the sense of exercise or nutrition or whatever. Like for me, it's even just walking around. Let's say, for example, um, I'm got this like rubbish on the floor, right? And I look at that rubbish and I say, oh, okay, I could suffer temporarily by bending down for 2 to 3 seconds, pick that piece of rubbish up and put it in the bin. It took me 5 to 10 seconds and a mild amount of exertion, or I could leave it and then get the pleasure of not having to bend down. But then ultimately, I stack all this rubbish up and it has to be done at some point. But on top of that, I become this person that doesn't pick the rubbish off my floor, and then I become a person that has a messy house. Or maybe it is yoga on a more macro level where I hate doing stretching. It is fucking boring. But when I sit there and think about doing stretching and think about how boring it is and how I don't want to do it, I then think about the other version of suffering where I don't do it. And in 15, 20 years, I have pinched nerves in my neck, back, shoulders. I can't move around properly. I've got all these injuries that are starting to pop up. I can't move. Think another 40 years ahead of that, and all of a sudden I'm a 70-year-old man who can't get out of bed. Even though I like lifting weights and everything, I'm no longer mobile enough to do any of that shit. And that version of suffering is significantly more than the fucking 15 minutes of yoga I just need to do daily. It is just much harder to think about it like that, because we always want to stave off difficult things, shove it up under the rug, and then deal with it later. But when you have to deal with it, you're going to be suffering so fucking badly. And you can think on this on the utmost of the macro level. This is how I've been thinking about it lately. I've been extrapolating this philosophy more and more, and integrating it into my way of thinking about things logically and stoically. And then I think about how everything, in essence, can be broken down into suffering or suffering. And yeah, you can argue with yourself and say, oh, but there's a gray area. You don't have to suffer all the time or whatever, and that's great. But then you get confusing. And I don't like gray area because it's confusion. And I like to stay closed-minded. And, you can say what you want, but closed-mindedness works, for me at least. Because if you, again, as I said, like if you fucking stand for nothing, you fall for anything. So it's better to be ignorant about a few things, maybe wrong about a few things because you won't change your mind, but overall be on the right path. Whereas if you go on the confusing path, and you're like on the moral high ground, and you're taking every perspective into consideration and everyone's opinion and feelings into consideration, or devil's advocating everything, or fence sitting everything, you'll never really get anywhere because you're just fucking getting pulled apart from every different angle. So I think about suffering versus suffering, and yeah, obviously I could fucking argue with myself about how there's a spectrum here and this doesn't need to be suffering. But if I just think about it in black and white context, everything is very easy. And there's no paralysis by analysis. I don't sit there and think about the thing. I just fucking do it. I just I just do the thing in sort of, paying the consequences or delaying it. You know what I mean? So you could apply this to everything. And I've been applying this even to my philosophy on, death and what it's like going to be like after you die. And, I've always had an intrinsic sense that there is some version of hell and there is some version of heaven. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't think it's necessarily like the Simpsons version where like you go up to the clouds and there's a big man in a robe, and then if you're bad, you go down into fire and brimstone. But there is some, I think there is some consequence to your actions. So if you suffer like temporarily through this lifetime by being a good person and generous and not a liar or a thief or whatever, then all of a sudden you get the consequence of that good deed in, a different time when you die or whatever. Whereas if you're a piece of shit, you're going to suffer significantly more. So life inherently is a lot of suffering. Not always, but there is a hell of a lot of suffering, and it's less suffering if you do the conscious suffering. But I think if life is suffering and there is always a suffer or suffer, then it would stand to reason in my mind that after all this, there is going to be a consequence to how you took this perspective. If you suffered in the first context, the lowercase suffering, and you live well and you live generously and you live like a good person, you then don't suffer afterwards. Whereas if you don't, and you're some hedonistic freak, you do horrible things throughout your life, you get that big uppercase suffering. So I've been thinking about this on the biggest of macro levels, whether it be like crazy, nigh religious perspective, or even just super micro level, like picking rubbish off my fucking kitchen floor, and it's serving me. It really is, because it just breaks everything down into very simplistic ways, and I like simple. I don't like over complicated shit, and that's obvious in my training. That's obvious in my nutrition. My favorite nutritional program is the vertical diet, because it's just so fucking easy to adhere to, and it's very simple, and it's so well rounded. It might not be perfect or optimized. I don't necessarily think there's some things about it that are great, but on a whole, it just works so well because it's so simple, for example. The same with high intensity. Yeah, there might be some benefit to other aspects of training, other things in other ways, but you only have so much time, energy, and resources to allocate to a specific thing. So, just get it as optimal as possible while keeping it as, remotely adherable or remotely simple as possible. And that's how I'm thinking about it in this, topic of suffer versus sufferers. It's just a very simple way of looking at things, rather than there having to be a gray area or a lot of, I don't know, hopefully you understand what I'm saying here. It's just a good, for the longest time, I would think about life and think, have I got the right perspective? Is this the way of looking at it? Is this the way of looking at it? And I was always very confused. It wasn't until I got to logic and stoicism did everything just kind of fall into place and make a hell of a lot of sense, and I was no longer confused anymore. I just knew who I was, I knew what I had to do and what needed to be done, and just basically this addition to it, suffer or suffer, has just simplified even more aspects. The more I can make my life simple, better. One of the things I learned from my old man, as flawed as he might have been, is as he got older, he would just simplify his life more and more and more. And I think a lot of older people do this, where they just make everything simpler and simpler over time, and then all of a sudden life is very easygoing, and you get rid of the fluff and pump. I relate this to fitness once again, because it's something I'm very well versed in. It's like when you do volume training, yes, you could get it fully optimized, but the problem with fully optimizing volume training, it takes a lot of different parameters, and all of a sudden you've got paralysis by analysis rather. And whereas with high intensity training, you simplify everything and you remove the fluff and pump. You remove, the exercise selections that you don't necessarily need. You remove the sets that you don't need by just increasing the intensity. You remove rest times in between sets because you're only doing one sets. You're taking less time in your workout, and thus you're able to focus better. So even if devil's advocate, the volume approach was better, if you can't do it perfected, it doesn't work very well. Whereas high intensity training, it's very easy to do the optimal version of it because it's very simple, and thus it's very easy to adhere to. So same thing goes for everything else in life. As I always say, my coin term, as I like to say it, it's better to do something that's a 90% optimal when you're doing it 100% of the time adherence rate than something that is, this is my own quote and I always fuck it up, then is something that is 100% optimal that you can only do, 10 to 20% of the time. And that's how I see, my philosophy in life is like overcomplicating shit means lack of adherence, whereas, oversimplification equates to adherence. So yeah, suffer or suffer. Very simple, very adherable way of looking at things. Anyway, probably over explaining this very simple concept. It probably doesn't need such an overcomplicated, fucking explanation. But anyway, you guys should try it. Next time you're doing something and you're you're choosing to do something difficult, especially, think, how do I want to approach this? Suffer or suffer? And it could be anything. I can't think of an example actually, but I'll use another example of my own, and I'll use this example to give you where the gray area and confusion does sometimes come in, even with something as simplistic as this idea. For example, Wim Hof breathing. I really despise doing it. It's really good for you, and it's good, but I just really don't like doing it. And it isn't one of those huge bang for your buck pieces of the pie. It's not like an exercise for a nutrition or a sleep or even maybe a yoga or running a business where it's a huge piece of the pie. You need to do these things. They're non-negotiables. You need to make money. You need to exercise. You need to sleep. You have to eat well, etc. Wim Hof, you can kind of take it or leave it. Yeah, it'll add some pretty big chunk of the pie to your daily, routine, and it will add a lot of vitality to your body and all these different things. But it isn't like oxygen. Exercise is like the oxygen equivalent. It's more like a painkiller. It can help, but it's not gonna, it's not gonna fix your. I mean, it can fix your life, granted. But point being is, for me, Wim Hof, I can get into a weird rabbit hole where there does become a gray area, where I go, all right, Wim Hof, temporary suffering to get the rewards, and then I go, all right, or I don't do it, and then I don't get the rewards. But then there's another option. There's like a third suffering where it's like, but if I do it, then I know that I might burn out, and I want to do other tasks that are even more important because I'll be adding too many things to my workload. So throughout my day, I only have so much time and energy. If I add things that I really despise doing, and it's actually going to wear me down more than build me up, then yeah, in theory, it's going to the temporary suffering will be good, but in other theory, it might actually break me down. So then this is where there becomes a gray area and noise comes in, and you've kind of just got to be decisive, and you've got to go, all right, I'm not doing Wim Hof breathing, for example, or if it's an ice bath, I really don't like ice baths. So, some things it might be a little bit more gray for you, but there are some things where it's just a straight non-negotiable. You should very much apply these to exercise or nutrition or these big factors. Maybe not so much the medium factors. I don't know. It depends on your willpower, depends on your mental makeup, depends on how neurotic you are. I like applying these to the big things and the small things. The more midway things like ice baths, Wim Hof, these like medium level beneficial things. I don't know. It doesn't work as well. There might be a different psychological tactic I use for these in the future. I don't know yet. But for small things like picking rubbish off the floor, or just saying to your girlfriend you love her, or whatever it is, just the small things in life, the suffer or suffer approach can really be beneficial. And then in the big macro things, it can be vastly beneficial, whether it be thinking about the consequences of life after death if you live like shit, or if the consequences of fucking not exercising and feeling and looking like shit. Yeah, suffer or suffer. Take it on. Try it out. You will fucking, you're gonna suffer in general in life, and you got to choose that suffering. And that is a stoic. That's a stoic approach, because in stoicism, you change the things you can change, and then you let the cards fall where they may in the things that you simply cannot change. And in many aspects, you can change things. You can just choose to suffer or suffer. But to make change, you almost always have to suffer. You never really make change by having a great fucking time. I mean, you do sometimes. There are those like weird rainbow periods of life where certain things just don't come with any consequence, and they're just sick. But we don't live in a utopia. Unfortunately, we live in sort of a a flawed world, and that's that topic for another day. The idea that we could technically live in bliss at all times. I do genuinely believe that there is a reality where everyone lives in unity and bliss and everything. The idea that there's always going to be chaos and there's always going to be black and white. I think this is a very Semitic idea, and I think it's been ingrained to us for thousands of years. But that's a way different topic. Maybe I'll talk about that. I don't know. But as of right now, because we don't live in that idealistic reality, we live in a reality where you do have to suffer to get the benefits. You got to look at it in those contexts, suffer or suffer. Anyway, I don't know. That's fucking it for that fucking topic, because this video is going forever. Man, I fucking love the way these videos are edited now. I kind of miss my old iPhone because it had like this kind of camera quality that almost made it look even more ethereal. But I'm really just trying to experiment with lighting and coloring or lighting levels in post to get this kind of video aesthetic that I like. There's something about YouTube that's fucking gross. Every thumbnail is the same. Everyone uses the same font. Everyone uses the same fucking tactics for their thumbnails. Everyone uses the same tactics for their video editing. It's, hey guys, today we're doing this, and then it's fucking like flashy fucking font like captioning what they're saying, and it's all just cookie cutter, all the same shit, and it kind of grosses me out. I don't mean to be like a Debbie Downer here, but I don't know. There's just nothing new on YouTube nowadays, it seems. So I'm trying to break away as much as I can, and this is my attempt with it, because I am simultaneously copying people from before me, and that's what we all do. We all copy people, but it is your duty to make your own spin on things to make it more interesting. Unless it's simply a thing where it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I do think a lot of YouTube's editing artistic expression is broke. It's fucking just like soulless. You know what I mean? It's lame. But anyway, I kind of like the way this looks. It looks nice. It's got that like 90s aesthetic, and if you want to know how I do it, it's basically just like I put sharpening on one layer of. I'm using 2 layers of video here, and on the one of the layers I do like a linear dodge add, or whatever the fucking effect is. I know nothing about video editing, and then I fucking like put sharpening on that, and then I move one of the videos slightly to the left, a few millimeters, so there's a bit of a blur, and yeah, I kind of get that 90s aesthetic. But it was more of a 90s aesthetic when I had my previous camera. I think that had to do with the contrast. Maybe I'll take like a videography course one day, like a cheap one, because it'd be interesting. I'd like to know about how all these things work. As of right now, I just do all this shit intrinsically, and I've talked about Lena, I forgot her name. Well, the German lady who filmed the 1936 Olympic Games, and she had this like way of lighting things, and the cameras they used back then and everything was so ethereal and beautiful and aesthetic, almost dreamlike. And she got pretty heavily fucking censored, I suppose, after World War II, because her people lost and art went to shit after that. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of like that aesthetic, so I try to replicate it here. Also, it's an homage to Blood and Guts, like Dorian Yates's 1990s VHS tapes, where he just went into the gym. It was black and white, one set to failure training. It's very much an homage to that, because that's what I train also, and that's how I like to record it, is that kind of aesthetic. So it's a grungy, old school, but also a bit artsy fartsy, which might be a bit gay for some of you guys, but I don't really give a fuck. What else? We got fucking 3 minutes here. I might just call it there, and you can just keep watching me do forearms or not, whatever. Anyway, peace out, bye.